and
Yep.
I'll trim off all the stuff from the beginning that is minutia. We'll probably still have a slow rolling start because I did see the list, the tentative list of who would be here, and I think it was a bit longer. So,
Um,
um,
I did put everybody on the invite and I can go double check. So hang on just a moment. We've got a couple minutes, you know how that works.
yeah, I remember like a million people signed up. So,
That's a good feeling.
no, it was like seven, but somewhere between six and a million.
Somewhere between 6 and 1 million. That's my life.
Mhm.
I've got 14 people listed
All right.
and they all have the invite. So I can send it out one more time, but that sometimes annoys people.
Somewhere between 6 and 1 million describes my bank account.
Ooh, well, at least
Nice.
it's yeah. At least it's six and not zero.
You missed so many candy bars with that. Um, so okay. Um, can I get a chat person before I go sharing screen and get because I want to get I'm going to share my whole screen, and what I don't want is the Zoom window to be part of the screen I'm sharing, so I'm going to minimize it, which means I'm not going to see the chat. So can I
Okay.
get somebody watching the chat, and I'll go back in to post stuff as needed, but
Vintor, Kristen, are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, so here again is the uh, Google Doc, or excuse me, the form that
mhm,
allows people to submit for clock hours.
right on.
And Vint and Kristen, I'm teaching with Bridget online right now. So we have a presenter named Lynn Johnston. I don't know if you know her. But so she's presenting right now. So I'm going to go back to our class. It's being recorded. And thank you all for being here. And text me with any questions or problems, okay?
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for doing this, Brendan. Really, really, really.
Of course,
You're a
yeah.
rock star.
Hey,
Okay.
this is fun. You're the rock star.
All right. See you guys soon. Okay. Bye-bye.
Hey everybody.
Bye-bye.
So this is a fun topic for me, and basically at the very top, I'll say this. This is a thing that I've talked a lot about with staff in my own district, and we always run out of time for this. This is always the like by the way thing at the end of the end of the meeting, and people are like, "Whoa, you can do that." And so I thought, wouldn't it be fun just to dedicate an entire session to it? So let me give you some positioning statements here. First, this is what I want to do. I want to define a framework. I want to generate components within that framework, and then I want to modify the individual components with AI today. That's my goal for how to approach this. That helps me put borders around this thing because the opportunities are limitless. You can do so many different things, but as TLC said, don't go chasing rabbits. Um, so that's my purpose there. And then I put this little video in here of somebody in one of those dollar machines because this to me is really a good example of what this can be like. So, those dollar machines at Chuck E. Cheese where like you think you're going to get rich, you're going to go in, you're going to grab like $1 million, and you end up leaving with like four, um, because you're just trying to get all of the things. And I think AI is kind of that way. And there's a ton that we can do, and I think we just have to focus. So what today is some concrete examples of how ChatGPT can create resources. And I'm using specifically ChatGPT. There are a lot of models out there, a lot of platforms, but this is the one that I'm the most familiar with. What we're talking about today is transferable. You can do a lot of these things on different platforms, and depending on whether you're paying for like the premium version or if you have a limited version, whatever, you might find that it's capped a little bit. So this is some of what's possible. Your experience, mileage may vary. And then I also want this to be work time to experiment with some of those examples that we create. What it is not is a very reasonable and valid conversation about the existential threat that AI poses. Absolutely, real conversations can and should be had and are being had about like what AI means and how it could replace us all, or I don't know, destroy us or whatever. I'm not really interested in that. We don't have time for that today. We just have an hour. And it's not a comprehensive overview of its capabilities. There are a million things that we're not going to get into today, and it's not a comprehensive overview of other AI platforms. So let's start with this. Powerful prompts. This is a helpful video. I can link it. I don't know, sometime soon when I'm able to get the chat back up. But long story short, there are some really good resources online that that will show you some like the power of making a good prompt, because you can't just go to ChatGPT and say like make my life easier. It doesn't know what to do. You have to give it some confines of that. And so this is kind of in descending order of importance. First, you have to name the task. Helps a lot with the context. If you give it some context, if you give it an example or an exemplar, and then beyond that, you can start to add stuff like persona, format, tone. I have some of this already created, and we're going to do this real time. And it's really helpful if you also have it open in another window and you're experimenting alongside me. So I'm going to stop there. Study the room. Questions do you have? Anything you want to say?
Brandon,
Yes.
I was just looking at your screen. We also have a beautiful picture of a turtle and a butterfly. Are you wanting to show that as well, or?
I wasn't really thinking about that, but we're gonna get there. So
okay, no problem.
Just use it as I'll just say yes. I meant to show that.
Of course.
Yeah. So I run the risk. Anybody that's ever been in a meeting with me knows that I run the risk of just going over here and then never coming back. So the thing about the framework is as much for me as it is for anybody else here. Because I have a lot of like exciting little toys to share, but let's do this first, and then I'll get to what the turtle and the butterfly are about. Okay. So this is a concrete example of a thing that I think we can do. And I've been experimenting with this a little bit recently. And so I'm just going to do this. Again, this is where if you're not a Spanish teacher, you would want to have your own window open and experiment with this on your own. Again, ChatGPT is what I'm recommending for this. But if you have a different platform that you're used to, feed it the same prompts and see what it comes up with. So I would say something along the lines of, what does a common first year world language curriculum include? By the way, you can abandon all writing conventions and all niceties. Just spit it out like you would a really fast text message to anybody that you know really well. It picks up what you're saying. You don't even need question marks. There are going to be typos. I kind of don't care. So then here, it's giving me all of these different elements of what first year language text might include. And then I'm going to say something along the lines of, create a Spanish 1 text. Oops, my fingers weren't on home row. Spanish 1 textbook that includes these elements. Include, now I'm starting to follow my prompts that I have over in this window right here. And you can freestyle this a little bit. Again, hopefully you're doing this in a window of your own. But that's what makes it a lab, is if we're actually all practicing. Okay. So I already see some typos that I made, but like it doesn't matter. It's just spitting this out, and we're moving on. You might look at this and say, you know what, I'm used to longer lists and more like target structures and that sort of thing. So you could just say stop there, or I don't know, I'll just let it spit this stuff out a little bit more. And this is not because of its limits. It has a lot more to do with the limitations of the prompt that I gave it. So I need to be more specific. So I'm going to go to my number 3 here, and I'm going to say, put the grammar and vocab in table format for each chapter. Make sure it serves a communicative purpose and isn't just detached grammar concepts. Include at least 15 high frequency terms and grammar chunks for each chapter. Name the chapter and play setting for each. While it's spitting this out, I'll also add that some people might see that we're creating this and say, I know that this exists. There are a dime a dozen, million textbooks in the world have this format. Why would I want to create another one of those? So that this is not to preach the virtues of textbooks that are formatted this way. This is just to show you that you could make this. And if you've ever thought, man, it could really be better if I did this or that, if it were more communicative, if it included a chapter on this, maybe it doesn't even have chapters and it's just this totally amorphous like set of skills where people can just take what they need. Those are different ways that you can take this. So again, as you're making this on your own, take it there. Go do that. I don't like that it's just giving me tables here. So I'm gonna say create a unit for each chapter that includes the following. Essential question. Let's say actual standard, duration of unit, and summative assessment. So you see what it's doing here. I'm gonna stop it there because I want to drill down on one of these. So I'm gonna say,
Brandon,
yeah, go
there's
ahead.
there's a request that would you be able to have just one window open? I'm having a hard time seeing the text.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can't. Let's see. I wouldn't be able to share the. Yeah, okay, so I can do that. What I'm gonna do though is I'm gonna have to start freestyling a little bit more because some of these prompts are like things that I kind of had planned before. But yes, that's perfectly fine. Give me a sec. Hey, iPhone. Who's iPhone?
And I found your perfect prompt video and I've posted that in the chat.
Wonderful. Yeah, that is not from a teaching context, but I've watched that video a couple of times now, and I think it's spot on.
It's me, Teresita.
Hey, Teresita, how you doing? Good to have you. All right, so what we have here is like, in my opinion, this is like a little bit too bare bones. So I'm gonna say write unit. Write a unit plan for chapter 1 that includes okay, actually let's do this. I have a sub for a week, right? A day by day plan for week 1 of unit 1, or sorry, chapter 1, with the following elements. Class is 50 minutes. The sub doesn't speak Spanish. Okay, cool. And now I'm gonna say warm up activity that is communicative, include specific, actually, I'll wait for that. That is communicative. 30-minute structured practice activity where students get real experience communicating with each other. And let's see, how many minutes am I up to? I don't know, maybe like another 15 minutes or 10 minutes. All right. So now it's getting a lot more specific. And that's just because I've tweaked my prompt a little bit. You could do this endlessly. You could just keep going further and further and further and further. I can say specify the key structures and vocab by day that students must have learned or the students must have learned or I don't know, must have practiced. Because sometimes it'll just give you like an activity, and I realized I needed to have said, give me like an actual list of stuff. All right, and then maybe I say suggest a video from YouTube that would work with the plan for day one. And so now it's starting to give me actual links that I can click, and I can start to go review those. Another way that I've used that same kind of thing is I say, for example, like I need examples of 7 different songs that include this particular structure. And then you go and you chase those songs down, and then you can use them in class instead of just having to pull from the songs that you already know. Any questions so far, or anything that you'd like to add, or anything that you've tried while I guess while I've been monologuing here that made this more useful to you? Not hearing anything. I'll add that you could do stuff like this. So, for example, look at the successful, actual, can-do statements, and you look at the proficiency benchmarks. So I'll start to get into some more, like some way more detailed versions of this. So, okay, I'm not sure if it's going to copy the text properly from a PDF. Let's see. Okay, let's just start something new. I need a summative benchmark assessment to be given at the beginning, middle, and end of school year to French 3 high school students. Actually, French 3 wouldn't be using the novice range, so let's say French 1 high school students. They should be able to, sorry. Communicative mode is presentational. Writing, 5 questions, or sorry, 5 prompts. All right, and then I just copied and pasted that. So now it's spitting out a benchmark assessment. It looks like it has actually evolved the prompt over the course of the year. You might do something like that. You might not. I don't know. I want to do what's useful for everybody else. So I have a bunch of other like specific examples of stuff that's kind of fun to do that I've done. But I don't know if that's of interest to you. So would anybody like to take us a different direction before I jump into some of that stuff?
Brandon, while we're waiting for anybody to answer, I'm just curious too. How often do you use this yourself in your daily teaching or your weekly teaching?
Well, I should have introduced myself at the top. So I'm Brandon Severance. I'm a Spanish teacher, but I teach online. And so as an answer to your question, I probably about weekly, I would say, and I don't use it as heavily as I probably could. But if the well runs dry, I might come to it for ideas. Because it knows a lot. So I can say, for example, we use Nearpod a lot. Familiar with Nearpod? And it's going to say, yes, Nearpod is a an online tool used to do this, that, and the other. Are you familiar with the specific activity types? Okay, great. So it knows all this stuff, right? And then I'm going to say, suggest a week-long Nearpod unit for my Spanish 3 class that uses these activity types. It's all going to be on Nearpod and completed asynchronously. I don't know. Let's just leave it at that. This would be better if I had an idea in mind. Okay, so it's going to talk about city life. If any of these are like kind of in, then I can go and I could say, for the VR field trip, give me an example. Like I could say, okay, el Museo del Prado. Great. Give me more resources for that. Name, like, how exactly would you structure it? You can just endlessly zoom in and in and in and in on this stuff. So that's a very long way to say about weekly.
Missy says, this is really great, especially for me teaching a language that doesn't have a lot of resources.
So funny you say that. Missy, you're a Japanese teacher, right? So one thing that I've done, I'll give you an example of a thing that's actually helped for me. This is not student facing, this is more teacher facing. So one of the things that we do from time to time in Tacoma is we'll do a rubric calibration amongst teachers. We want to do a blind grading and see, do we all arrive at the same conclusion about what grade this would get. The part that's really hard about that is getting everybody to get samples at the same time. On top of that, we have 1 Japanese teacher in the district, 2 Chinese teachers, like 5 Korean teachers, 8 French, and like 36 Spanish. So when you don't know who's going to show up to a PLC meeting, you have to have examples for everybody. And so you have to even like there can't just be more for Spanish because there are more Spanish teachers, because like what does the one person do for Japanese? And so I've actually used AI so I had to create this summative assessment, right? Well, you can actually flip that and you can say, I need exemplars. I need student exemplars based on these different proficiency levels. Here's what novice, low, mid, high, intermediate, low, mid, high would look like. Give me a response to this prompt that you just gave me that is intermediate, mid, that is intermediate, low, that is novice, high. So I take those responses and I have it generate multiple, and I've done it over several languages. And then from there, I feed that into a video creation that has like a text to voice AI generator. And so I've made videos for Japanese that are the same prompts, like the same responses to the same prompts that we're getting in Spanish, French, Korean, and Chinese and Japanese. And I'm able to give them a video so that they can also participate in the rubric calibration. So that's a teacher application, but and I can show you those videos. I have them. They're in a website called Clipchamp. And I totally forgot your original question.
No question. Just that this is great for us teachers that don't have that don't teach Spanish. That's basically, but that's so brilliant. I didn't even think about asking it for examples. And right now I just typed in like what you said with the prompt of give like a first year, like create a first year course or something. And this is insane. It's like giving me week by week and it's giving me vocab and that's awesome. Thank you.
It's like I mean, all due respect to the hard work that goes into building a textbook and a curriculum and a scope and sequence, but this is kind of like a textbook killer. It can be. I would think that, for as much as we get stuck in the hand wringing of like what AI is going to do to us, I would think that the people that would be the most terrified of this would be anybody that works for an editorial. Because it can really spit out, as long as you're asking it the right questions. And I've kind of given a sloppy example of it in this, but I promise if you refine this on your own and you kind of play with it yourself through trial and error, you'll come up with better examples than what I've shown so far. So speaking of the video and like the AI to video thing, one of my favorite prompts to ask it is like, can somebody here name a concept that they've tried to teach their class recently, whether a concept or like a skill or something? Just anything from any language.
My students have been struggling with the future tense, irá al infinitive.
Okay, so the create a 2-minute video script to explain the skill of saying to describe what, or not describe, I guess, to say what someone is going to do in Spanish. So it's kind of circumspect, but all right, so this is kind of giving me, I want to change the format. Okay, so I'm going to say make this a script that I can make an online video for. This will be input into clip champ. I need lots of examples. Okay, so I'm gonna actually switch platforms here, and I'm gonna go to my I'm gonna switch off of this really quick, and I just want to show you on the way that I log into Clipchamp is through my actual like school browser, which is Microsoft Edge. So I'm gonna switch the screen that I'm sharing over to that, and then so bear with me here for a second while I transition. All right, share sound, Microsoft Edge, cool. All right, so here we are, Clipchamp. And I could show you some videos that I've already made too, so you know I'm not just making this stuff up. All right, so I'm going to create a new video, and then I'm going to do this. So I'm going to go to record and create, text to speech, right? And then I'm going to pull from the video script that it just gave us. I'm going to say,
Hola, estudiantes. Today, we're going to learn how to talk about future actions in Spanish using IARA. This is a very useful skill.
so it kind of got that messed up. Where it fails the most is when it's mixing languages. But let's just say we're gonna make this all in Spanish. So like, hola estudiantes, hoy vamos a practicar con el tema del futuro. Blah, 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 blah. All right, cool. So I'm gonna switch that to, I'm gonna pick the language here. And then I'm gonna say I want Costa Rican Spanish. And then I'm gonna say I want Maria to read this to us.
Hola, estudiantes. Hoy vamos a practicar con el tema del futuro.
No se vayan, que va a ser súper emocionante. Emocionante. All right, cool.
Hola, estudiantes. Hoy vamos a practicar con el tema del futuro. No se vayan que va a ser súper emocionante.
All right, and then here's what Juan would sound
Hola,
like.
estudiantes. Hoy vamos a practicar con el tema del futuro. No se vayan que va a ser súper emocionante.
And just so you know, like that it can do this in Japanese or Korean or whatever other language, I'm going to translate. So in the separate window that you can't see anymore, I'm saying translate that script into Japanese. And so I'm going to copy and paste that in just a second when it's done. Problem is, I don't really even know which part is the part that I'm supposed to copy and paste.
Brandon, while you're doing that, is Clipchamp free?
If your district uses Microsoft, it's part of it. Like Microsoft absorbed it. It's under that umbrella now. So for Yeah, there is a free version for anybody, and the free version is pretty good. Because one of the things that you pay for with Clipchamp is like access to a bunch of media that you probably don't need. Because the other stuff that you can get is sufficient. Sorry about the thumbs up. And then the other thing is that you can pay for, if I click this upgrade button, it's going to give me the option to like export my video in like, you know, 1,000,000K. And nobody's trying to watch an educational video about conjugating verbs in 8K. I mean, hopefully your videos are better than like just about verb conjugation. Like you're not going to be just doing that, but you get the point. Right? Like they're watching it on a small screen, so the resolution doesn't matter. Also, the content is not such that you would even care what the resolution is. So I don't know what the catch is, honestly. It feels like too good to be true. I don't know. There are all kinds of different apps that we use that I don't know about you all, but you know, I'll be using the free version for like a week and I'm like, yeah, I'm hooked. I'm gonna pay up, you know. Okay, here's what Japanese would sound like. And we have all of these options, by the way. This is not ChatGPT anymore, but this is just like a good example of what you can do. So like it doesn't just exist in a silo. It's like what useful thing am I creating with this? And for me, one of the useful things, and to go back to Vince's question earlier, like how often do I use it? Well, I make all kinds of videos with this. And this is the workflow. This is how I've done that.
こんにちは、学生の皆さん。今日はスペイン語で IRA を使って未来の行動を話す方法を学びます。
So I left the Spanish in there, I guess, because I only, but then you would take this and you would add, okay, so I'm going to say like inspiring teacher. Okay, cool. So I want some media that is going to show, okay, so here's Ted Lasso. We're going to put him in. Oops, I forgot to save this audio. So, all right. And then I want to put in, this is just like any video editing at this point. And the learning curve to do this is a little bit higher than just using AI, but so we could just max this out and we could watch. Can you still see the whole video? Is it on your screen? Okay.
IRA を使って未来の行動を話す方法を学びます。これ
So you could do that and then you can quickly add some text and that sort of thing. I could say, okay, I want to add, you know, I'm going to add this text that's going to like fade in later. And I'm going to say, important Japanese lesson. Oops, should capitalize the L, right? All right. And then I'm going to take that. I'm going to make it fade in effects or no, I don't know. Who cares? This isn't why we're here, but,
こんにちは、学生の皆さん。今日はスペイン語で IRA を使って未来の行動を話す方法を学びます。
I should have made that smaller, but the point is that you can make really dynamic videos. I'll just show you one example of one that was from like a script that here, like, oh geez, what am I doing? Okay. This one is about false cognates.
Do you remember what a cognate is? If so, what do you think a false cognate might be? This short video will give a brief explanation and some examples of both. Cognates are words that look and sound similar in two languages and share a meaning. Note that in order to be true cognates, words must also share a common origin. For the sake of this activity, we will refer to words that meet this definition as cognates. Just know that it gets more complex with things like loanwords. Let's look at some examples of cognates. Family,
Familia,
restaurant,
restaurante,
chocolate,
chocolate,
music.
música.
False cognates are words that look and sound similar in two languages with different meanings. In Spanish, these are sometimes called false friends. Can you think of why? Let's look at some examples of common false cognates between Spanish and English. What do you think this word means in English?
Carpeta.
If you said folder, then you were right. Most people would say carpet. What about this?
Éxito.
This word means success, but it sounds a lot like exit. What about this?
Introducir.
This word means insert, but it sounds like introduce.
And I think that some people might actually use it that way. But anyway, you could do that. And then there's a one layer more where I took this video because I start to have some practice like right here. I put this video into Nearpod and then I inserted questions along the way. So I'm also, when I'm making these videos, I'm inserting like some space to ask questions and to practice, because I'll embed some multiple choice questions or some open-ended text responses. So, and this all started with a prompt in ChatGPT, give me a 2-minute video script that talks about this concept. So that's where it was born. And then you just carry it all the way to its end and you can pull in a lot of other tools. So
my understanding then is that you created basically everything in ChatGPT, then import that into the video. So you can verify what you have that ChatGPT has created based upon your prompts, and then continue there to either other platforms, other apps, whatever.
Yeah. And so, you should always verify everything, especially as Missy alluded to, like everything's always Spanish and like everybody else gets the crumbs. I don't know to what extent. I have anecdotal data about this, but I have noticed that it gets stuff wrong. It appears to me more frequently when I'm asking it cultural questions that are like non-Spanish speaking stuff. So it told me that like South Korea was north of North Korea once, which is like, other than having maps, I also know because of the names of, anyway. So like, that's obviously wrong, but that's an easy one to fix. But what happens when it's a little bit more nuanced cultural information? So to me, it's more like, it gives me a starting point, and then of course you should always go through and make sure it's solid. It also told me China was like the leading coffee exporter in the world. And that one I was like, that just doesn't sound right. And so of course I'm Googling that, and or it was like the biggest cultivator or something. And I was like, because I was using it for 2 truths and a lie for world language PD for our world language teachers in Tacoma. So I was like, I was using it as an icebreaker, like give me 2 truths and a lie that includes these different cultures. And so that's where I was catching some of those errors. So, I mean, that's one thing right now. Again, if you have the window open right now, try it, see what you come up with. I'm going to get this window back open. I want to show you some other use cases that it's probably the thing I'll repeat the most today, but like really the value is not that I show you this, it's that you try it right now and see what happens when you come up with different stuff and you ask it to improvise and whatever. So I have to figure out how to make my screen small though. And hello, Michelle. Welcome in. Good to see you. And Zoe. Hey, there's Zoe. All right. I don't know who's coming in. So I'm just kind of like, I'm seeing you when I pull the screen all the way up. All right. So this is fun. I was doing this just a little bit ago. And story generation. So let's see, where's my story here? This is the thing that people are asking about. So I said, I drew this picture of my daughter and a duck. And so I drew this and then I uploaded it into ChatGPT and I was like, what's going on in this picture? And so it explains it. And already, like, just stop there. There's so many different things you could do with that, just that alone. So for example, you take an image and that somebody drew in your class, and then you ask ChatGPT what's going on in that picture. And then you try to pair those descriptions. Like the next day the kids come in after they've done that, that was their exit ticket. The next day they come in, and around the room, there are pictures like that you've printed out that you generated like this. And then you put the text next to them and you see if they compare them, you know, like you could do all kinds of fun stuff with this. Anyway, this is what I decided to do. Bring these characters to life. I said, make a 3D rendering, like 3D animation rendering of these characters and tell the story of their friendship. So it's already created the story about, my daughter's name is not Luna, but like, you know, it said Luna. And the name of the duck is Pip, and it's got this whole story about them. And I said, use the original image of Pip and Luna to illustrate the story. Use 3 or so images. And so that's cool. It tells about what these moments are. And then I started again. I said, create a 3D animation style of these characters. And then I said, show them surfing. And I described the scene that I wanted, so it does that. I said, show them hiking. And then I said, show them around a campfire with their friends, strumming instruments. Show them at Pip's 8th birthday. So imagine this in the target language. You can, whatever your target language is, you can have all of these different images that you've generated based on text that your students have created, you know, a class story or something. You create these images and then you pair them, or you sequence them, or you sequence the story with the images and the sentences, and then you like make sure that they all match. Here I asked it for, so I don't know if you're a Spanish teacher, you might know what this is. This is called Turrito de Pucará. These are all over in Peru, right? They're on a lot of people's roofs. And so I said, I asked it to create a 3D animated image of Turrito de Pucará. And so here it is. And then I said, create a cute story for kids about this Turrito. Where is it from? What does it want to do in life? What are some obstacles, etc.? And it gives me Turrito's Big Adventure. And of course, it could do this in whatever your target language is. I kept it in English because everybody can read it. And then I said, for each of these chapters, create an image for each one. So it spits out these images. And you could just keep going. Here's another one. This is from like an hour ago. I drew a turtle and a butterfly. These are doodles I do with my daughter all the time. So create a 3D animated version of these characters, and it does this. And again, you could take this and just run wild with the story for that. So that's one thing. This is kind of a flashback to way earlier stuff, but when we created like like a Spanish 1 textbook outline, then where is it? So anyway, I lost it, but you can just say, write me a newsletter that I'm going to send out monthly that is focused, like that explains to families what we're working on this month, some of the highlights, and it'll spit out the newsletter for you. I'm not going to type it in right now just because I think you get the point, and just the idea that you could do that, just go type it and try it. What are some other things? I'm looking at the PowerPoint here. Project exemplars. The first time that you do a project in your class and you don't have exemplars from last year, because we always keep a project or two and we're like, this one met standard, this one exceeded standard. You can have it create a project exemplar before anybody's ever seen the project. So that could be in writing, that can be in speaking, speaking would be if you take it, again, the text to speech. So you would say, write what it would sound like for somebody at novice high to respond to this prompt. And you're going to have to do a lot of tweaking with that kind of stuff, because you're probably going to have to say, okay, make more mistakes. Make mistakes that would be natural for a first language or for a second language learner. Because sometimes when you tell ChatGPT to mess up, it's like it's not good at making mistakes, like the kind of mistakes that we're used to seeing. So you have to coach it. Image creation. This is really the image creation. This is kind of like, this is fun, I guess. I get a kick out of this. I think this is really fun. But like, how many times have you needed a picture for a phrase that it's just like impossible? There's nothing on Google to illustrate whatever the thing is that you're looking for. So it's so helpful to suddenly be able to just create an image out of thin air to illustrate a phrase or some very specific use of some words. that you can do that now. And you don't have to draw it. How many times have you turned to the whiteboard? You have to turn your back to your class for like, 30 seconds while you like try to draw a deer drinking water from a waterfall or something like that. And everybody's just like, you lost your class. They've been in the bathroom for 15 minutes at this point. You're like, everything's in disarray. That's like a doomsday scenario, but like, you've probably felt that stress, and this can be a quick thing for that. You can also do, well, actually, what does that mean for comprehensible input, I guess? We should probably talk about that briefly. So if comprehensible input is language that is understood, and images are one of the best ways to support people's comprehension, what can you do with this? Just let
Okay.
that marinate.
Two things here.
Yes.
Zoe says Chat GPT is very helpful, but I would say knowing how to use it in a creative, engaging way like you did is even more important. And then she says the idea of people using this, students using this, is this fosters equity. Students who are not good at drawing will also gain confidence in their projects.
Yeah, I think like totally. You could use this as a reward. It doesn't always. I mean, it can be like central to the stuff that you're doing, but it can also be a reward. Like I like to use it's kind of a white lie, but I like to use the limited wall space as an incentive. Like we're all doing this big project, but we only have room to display like 5 of these because look at how many posters we've accumulated. And we're going to do a gallery where we're going to vote on our favorite thing or something like that. Like so the story, your story, or you'll select a certain amount of stories and you'll say, okay, we're gonna display your illustration for your story on the wall. It's gonna become like the avatar of our classroom for like a whole month. It's gonna be the first thing that everybody sees when they walk through the door, is like your world that you've created. I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, that sounds like kind of a fun thing to experiment with for me. And maybe that thing that I just said is not where you ultimately land, but how could you spin that off in a way that would be fun for your kids?
Yeah, but that's a jumping off point. And sometimes that's all you need is to give it a try, give it a go. And then from there, hey, next semester we try something else.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know. This is what I meant at the very beginning. Like I could easily go chase all these rabbits. And I encourage you to, but for the sake of me fitting everything into an hour, I didn't want to do that. Here, let me give you an example of the like really impressive image generation that it can do too. So this is one that I was playing with the other day. So I said, are you familiar with Don Quixote? All right, so it's like it's proving to me that it read the book, like okay, great. All right, and so I'm going to say summarize the first 2,000 words in 3 key moments with an image for each. This can be a way to make a longer story comprehensible or approachable. Another thing that I've repeated a lot is that like while it's doing this in English, like don't sleep on its ability to give really high quality translations. I could easily just ask it to do this in Korean and it'll do it. Now, whether it's quality, I can't tell you. I don't know for sure.
We did put in a Korean example in our last facilitated interdependent language learning brief with the Center for Applied Linguistics, Phil, these articles we've been doing from Miss Sussful. So we just did a ChatGPT example for a lesson, and we asked for Korean. We also did one in Romanian, but then I sent that to a Korean instructor and asked her to comment on the language. So I got that annotation in the thing, but to tell you the truth, it was surprisingly good. There was the things she was commenting on were things that would probably would be kind of a matter of opinion. Many of them, they weren't necessarily completely wrong. They were simply like from this perspective or another. So I would certainly, if you're going to be using something in any kind of serious way, want to have anything validated by someone who's a native speaker. But in terms of just getting a place to start, surprisingly good.
That's been the reaction that I've got from all the languages that I don't speak, which is most of them, because I get two. But from in my district, the Korean teachers, the Japanese teacher in particular, they've endorsed the stuff that comes from it and the times that we've done it. We've hit a roadblock, by the way, if anybody's been watching this. We hit a roadblock with Don Quixote, and so you'll notice that it'll stall sometimes, and it'll be because of the morality of ChatGPT. And so there are ways to jailbreak that, and there's a lot of internet advice about how to get it to do that. But it also helps to know why it's stopping, and it'll say, I can't generate the image because the request does not follow our content policy. So there's actually if you're not familiar with Don Quixote, there's this time when he goes, it's one of his first departures or adventures, and he goes to this inn, and he thinks that it's a castle with these princesses and stuff, but they're actually prostitutes. And so he thinks he's going to go be knighted and stuff. And so this is a time when you're the human might know more than your human knowledge is it still is obviously really valid, and you're not the back seat, I guess is what I'm saying. You're and if you know that about the book, then you know why ChatGPT is oh, I'm not going to illustrate that scene. So, and then here it won't illustrate him attacking sheep. So there's probably a crafty way for me to get it to do that. But let's just let's pick a random book here. Let's pick, okay. So these are some of my favorite books right here. The Sonatas de Valle Inclán, right? And this is a version of Don Juan. And so I'm gonna say, are you familiar with the Sonatas by Valle Inclán? Okay, cool. Illustrate 3 key scenes from the Sonata de Otoño. And it's going to do that. Actually, there are some pretty maybe scenes where it's not going to do it too. These books they have some pretty dark elements to them. So it's loading, right? But you get the point, that you can do this. And I actually saw somebody on the ChatGPT Reddit recently that they just did this for their own enjoyment. They read a book that didn't have pictures, and they wanted to see this epic medieval novel represented in images. And so they're just they asked ChatGPT create illustrations for this book I'm reading, and it brought it to life for them. So it's just kind of fun, I think, in general. Anyway, that's a lot of me talking. Hopefully you got some concrete use cases from some of the stuff that I've been excitedly rambling about. And I'll share the PowerPoint with you that I have been basing this on. And then, of course, the link for clock hours.
The link for clock hours is in there twice now.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
And also, Brandon, if you wouldn't mind putting in your email address in case anybody wants to contact you later about this.
Yeah.
I mean, I know most of us can find you. That's not a hard thing, but for those of you who aren't,
I'm in my basement.
Regulars, yeah.
Hard to find. I'm easy to find online, but I'm always downstairs because I teach online. What does anybody have any specific right? So here's the thing. Yeah, I've been using ChatGPT 4.0 and they recently upgraded and then like they opened their premium tier to everybody. And then I don't know what they did after that. I'm not sure if that's still available without having to pay. I personally pay, so I've been showing you a premium version of it. A lot of the text stuff is still available. I mean, the text stuff is still available to you, to anybody, but there are workarounds there. There are other platforms. If you just start to look ChatGPT alternatives up. Also, for example, in my district, I can't speak for other people's districts, but because Copilot is AI under Microsoft and we're like a Microsoft district, we just have that available to us. And Copilot just has the image generation embedded. So you might find that, and it's the same engine. It's DALL-E creating those images, and DALL-E is through OpenAI. So there's a roundabout way to get the same benefit. I will say that when I've experimented just a little bit, cursory research that I've done, and again, anecdotal, but I've tried to compare, like when I give the same prompts to these different engines or platforms, what kinds of responses do I get? And I've got way more detailed responses from ChatGPT for similar prompts, way more fleshed out. Because I really have created a textbook essentially, not today in our session, but like the other day when I was just kind of practicing and seeing what was possible. And the same prompts fed to Copilot were not yielding the same impressive results. It was still impressive, but just not quite there. Yeah, so it'll still give you a prompt for it. It's super it's really interesting if you've not played with this before too. It can coach you on how to use it. So if you say, for example, like I'm kind of like the example is kind of tired where you go and then somebody says, and guess what? I'm also a robot. Like I am ChatGPT. Like that happens a lot. And like everything that I just said was scripted by ChatGPT. I'm not going to do that. That's not the case here. But you can get really meta and be like, look, I'm a new user. You tell me, how can I ask you to do things in a way that will give me better results? And it will. You don't have to go like look for that somewhere else. And you can say, you can do that. Tara, my link requires
Yes.
sign in. Oh, whoops.
Yes, Brandon, so that's exactly been my experience has been that I just don't feel like I have the skills to frame and format my questions. For example, I was giving a test on days of the week, months, weather, and season, and I asked it to create a multiple choice test for novice Spanish 1 learners. And it continued to give me questions that there's no way they would be able to answer, like what is the day after Sunday, where we hadn't really learned those structures. I simply just wanted them to say the days or describe the weather.
I don't know for sure. Like I don't know exactly the answer to it, but I can tell you what I would do if it did that. And I'm not an expert. I'm just a person that likes to play around with it. So I would say, this is too complex. And I would say, these are not familiar structures. This is for kids who are only learning like lists right now. And they need this, this, and this. And if you get really descriptive and really, if you're just like very assertive with it and say like, this isn't working and say why though, and it'll usually reroute. Sometimes you'll just keep running into the same wall again and again and again. But I've found some success saying.
So I can just speak like that and just say, bring it down. More basic.
Mm-hmm.
These are 6th graders.
Yeah.
But were you just saying, go ahead.
Oh, you can get really explicit too. You can say like, remind it. Say, I'm working with proficiency levels that you may be familiar with. Are you familiar with these proficiency levels? It'll look them up, and you could say, make it tell you like what is the difference between novice, low, mid, and high, and then say, okay, now your prompt needs to match what you just told me novice low was.
And were
And
you just saying that that we can actually type in to Chat GPT, explain, like, help me format questions?
yeah, yeah, you can. I mean, just like it's kind of interesting. It's the same thing that befuddles us by giving us the answer we're not looking for is like you can also ask it, how can I ask you a better question so that you will give me an answer I'm satisfied with? Like it will counsel you on how to use it.
Wow. Okay. That's fantastic. Thank you.
So anything, if you're just like, I'm like, don't don't not write it. Like if you're frustrated with it and you want to throw it through the window, tell it why. And it'll like it might hone its prompt a little bit. Sometimes you just have to hit the reset button. Here's an example of a thing. I was like, I created like one of those videos in Clipchamp that I demoed earlier. And I said, I was doing a video on want. And so I wanted a kid to be looking, pointing to himself and then he wanted new shoes. And I wanted a kid standing outside of, he was standing outside of a shoe store, window shopping, looking at these shoes. And I wanted to say like, él quiere unos zapatos nuevos. He wants some new shoes. And then I wanted him to turn. So I said, use the same image, but have him face the camera and point into the store. Because now it was going to be him talking. He was going to say first person singular. He was going to say, I want new shoes. So I wanted the same image, but I just wanted him to be doing this. And then the image that it created was that, but then it put also like a parallel version of him inside the store next to the shoes. And it got really weird. And every time I tried to refine it, it just got weirder and weirder and weirder. And so I just had to abandon. I had to like close that chat, start a new thread, and go from there. And so sometimes you might find that it's grabbing onto everything you're saying. You might just have to like blank slate, like clean slate it, and then go start in a new thread.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry, Dave. I can't do that.
yeah, and there's been recent controversy too with its like with its voice capability. I don't know if anybody's been following Scarlett Johansson and like her war with I mean, it's not like a war. It's legitimate. Like they use their voice. They use their voice. And according to her, they asked her to use her voice and she's like, no. And then they ended up using her voice anyway, pretty much. And so that was Sky, all inspired by the movie Her. So there's voice capability too, which is really interesting. We haven't talked about any of the one-on-one stuff. This is really fraught, and this is really me going down the rabbit hole here. But you as a language learner, maybe you want to brush up on your whatever language. Maybe you have a third language or a fourth or who knows, a 10th language that you're working on for the polyglots here. You might be doing that, and you can just say, look, I'm an advanced low learner. That's the level I need you to work with me on. I want to talk about a list of topics or help me generate a list of topics and just have a conversation with me. And then point out errors to me when I make them, or at the end of the conversation, generate a quiz about the things that we just talked about. You could do all that kind of stuff. Now that's really useful for one-on-one. And then also adding speech to that is like really cool that you can add audio to it. I want to tell students about that because that's really good conversation practice. But that's like obviously really dangerous because I don't know if we're ready. I don't know. I don't know what you all think. Do you think we're ready? I'll ask you this. Are we ready to coach students on how to use AI yet? Do you think we're there?
My initial impression is that there are people like you that are leading the way, but that, the majority of us are just getting our toes wet on this. And so it's kind of like it would be hard for me to go into a classroom and say, hey, this is what we're doing when I'm not sure what it is. And probably there's at least 3 people in there that are so far beyond me already with what they're doing that it's not up to me to teach this.
It's so powerful. And there are so many different ways. Like, it's one of the things that's so great about it is how many different ways you can spin off and do all these cool things. And so that's like also the reason that I'm like, the same thing that makes me want to show it to kids is the same thing that makes me not want to show it to kids, which is like, you have, do you have the maturity yet to handle this properly? But on the other hand, one of my fears is that if we don't, they're already going to be using it. So if our job is to educate, I'm on a soapbox at this point. Just stop the recording. But if our job is to educate, we are preparing them for all things, right? And like, this is a reality. This is here. It's not going anywhere. So globally, who are we as educators? What is our job? And I think this exists. This is in the mix. And so I don't think, doing this is the right approach. But I also don't think just like handing them this, like, this unrestricted platform that is really hard to like wrap our heads around is necessarily the answer either. I don't know what it is. It's like a
I just
proxy
posted
conversation to phones.
Yeah, I just posted a link from a guy that we've been following for a couple of years now at the Necessimo Neural Group, that Jerry Registre. And he's working on a new app that is one where you can kind of spontaneously say, hey, I'm walking down the street and I see this interesting building and I want to find out more to talk about it in Spanish, for example. And so he's going to come and do a demo for us next week. But I just gave you a quick link to one of his YouTubes. We've also got others of his YouTubes, which are really helpful for getting some background on what's possible and things. I mean, a lot of them, it's even beyond where he had a year ago. Of course, what you're able to do now with both images and also video and I mean, not video so much, but speaking. But I just applaud you, Brandon, for just jumping in. I think you have to just jump in and try a little bit and see where it's going to go. Just leave yourself open. Don't feel like you have to figure it all out immediately.
It's Pandora's box. Like, if there's ever been in my relatively young career, like, I don't know that I've ever seen a Pandora's box like this one. Because it's like once you've like once you put this in front of kids, it's like, who knows where it goes. Hopefully in a good way. But anyway, like I said at the beginning, at the top of the session, this was not about like our fears, which I think are like, valid, totally worth talking about. But I wanted to give you some practical applications. I hope I did that. I hope you got to experiment, do some fun stuff. Does anybody have anything that you want to tell me or tell the people here or ask?
I just wanted to add, if you want clock hours, Catherine put it in at sorry. If you want clock hours, Catherine put it in at the beginning and I put it in there a little earlier. So there is a link to the clock hours. And if there's any issues with that, please contact us at waffleboard@gmail.
Yeah. Can I ask, Brendan, our districts decided it's an equity issue to block ChatGPT right now, right? Because like the kids who have another computer then can use it and the kids who don't only have the school computer couldn't. And so it's unblocked this year. And so kids are using it wildly for every sort of thing, which is kind of interesting to watch them navigate and teachers try to respond to that in a reasonable way. And so they're piloting those two programs I put in the chat. Do you have any experience with either of those? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. So what I've seen, and it's blocked for students. ChatGPT in particular is blocked for students in my. It's blocked, but it's not. Like, they're gonna find a way to use it, I think. If they really want to. It's just whether it's like readily provided for them. What they do have at least in my school, I'm not sure if the whole district, is Conmigo. And that's interesting because it generates like what it deems like troubling dialogue with it, and it'll like auto generate this email. It'll send it to everybody that's on an email list, like a contact list for an individual kid. And I've got some bogus ones and I've got some that were like legitimate, because if the kids like die, then it'll flag it as violent conduct or something, and then it'll send an email to like everybody on that kid's contact list, including teachers. I have seen that. But we also have like our admin has sent us some threads between students because it tracks everything. And so like if you zoom out a little bit further, like that might set off some alarms, like kind of the big brother part of it, like privacy for the student, like having anyway. So our admin has sent us some threads between students and Conmigo where it was like a really productive use back and forth where a kid was like, I still don't understand your explanation of this, and that back and forth and back and forth. And it was this tennis match of like a question, answer, until the kid got a response that was satisfactory to them. And they were talking to it like a friend, like over a text message. It was really cool to see. So I've seen that work in the district sanctioned platform. And I've also seen the opposite. I think, and then one of the other issues that comes up a lot is like, and it's not just like what salacious content might they access. It's like what the integrity of work anymore. I don't know. I think I rambled a little bit as a response to your question, but does anybody else have a response to that? I am not the arbiter of any of this. I am not the authority. I'm just a guy that gets really excited. I have fun doing this. So does anybody else have a response to that?
Well, we could continue to talk, but we are 10 minutes already over. I don't know if you want to stop the recording. We can leave this open if people want to chat some more, but I think for
yeah,
practical purposes, we have